And we need immigrants in this country. Forget the fact that the farm, that our vegetables would rot in the ground if they weren't being picked by many immigrants, many illegal immigrants. The fact is that the birth rate in this country is way below replacement level.
Whether Americans want to realize it or not, illegal immigration involves human suffering. Essentially, it's black market exploitation, in some cases, actual slavery. Defending illegal immigration also defends the trafficking of sex slaves, including children. It defends extortion, accompanied by death threats if victims refuse to pay. When I first started following politics in my 20s, the Democratic Party appeared to understand the importance of securing America's border. It wasn't just about protecting economic opportunities for our country's citizens, but also shielding the victimized from the dangers of crossing into America illegally.
We all agree on the need to better secure the border and to punish employers who choose to hire illegal immigrants. We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law. We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked.
However, since Trump descended from the escalator with a hard stance against illegal immigration, Democrats have abandoned their public positions on preventing imported human suffering, seemingly just to oppose their greatest arch nemesis. Now, the political left's stance on illegal immigration is to maintain the status quo so that someone can clean their toilets and cut their lawns cheaply.
You have a very good point, though. There are a lot of Latinos here in this country that do agree that the immigration problem is a problem, and it does need to be addressed, and it does need to be fixed.
Interesting.
But making those comments, those racist comments, do not help.
And if you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?
Oh, that's no.
In the sense that,
No.
you know what I mean? Like, when I'm saying
There's
that
more jobs to be
in LA, they always...
But
they
Latinos are not only the only
No,
people
I didn't mean it
doing
like that. Come on. No, I would never mean it like that.
Okay.
Like, I'm not part of this argument with...
I think what you're saying is that Trump himself
He needs to look at
probably relies on a lot of these people that he's insulting.
I think, you know what? Donald Trump, like many people, says a lot of stuff.
Quite literally, the Democratic politicians are using slaveholder logic to perpetuate the existence of cheap labor because they can't envision a world where industries like agriculture are sustained without an exploited, illegal workforce that must live in the shadows of our society.
How many of you are sending your kids to college to go and work on them? Okay, well, guess who is working the farms? So that you can afford your food.
So that you can have food.
So that you can have food. Now, how many of you are looking to send your kids into hospitality after this college education so that they can go and make the beds at the hotels? How many of you are planning to send your kids to college? Because that's what we do here. We send everybody to college. How many of you are planning to send your kids to college so that they can then go and build these houses? So the reality is that so long as we live in a capitalist society, there's always going to be someone or a group of people that will do work that some of the rest of y'all don't want to do. These are the people that are really making us great in this country.
The debate over a century and a half old about who will pick our cotton if we emancipate the Negro slave has been resurrected and remixed into, quote, who will tend to our crops? Blind hatred for Trump prevents them from seeing how they're defending human suffering on a massive scale. With every rationalization to resist strengthening our borders, more tragedy befalls the migrants they claim to care about. There is an unwillingness to acknowledge the ugliness of open borders because doing so would force them to realize how they've tacitly supported cartel extortion, the sexual violation of women and children, and of course, murder.
It's estimated that perhaps half of California's farm workforce is undocumented. So My question is, how are you supposed to farm? How are farmers in California supposed to survive if there are truly mass deportations in which half of the workforce is sent out of the country? How Americans don't want to do that work. It's frankly just too backbreaking. So who's going to work the farms?
Senator,
In a
I know we talked about
2021
this
NBC News report, David Sanabria, a Honduran national, and his daughter Jimena hoped to get help from Mexican coyotes to enter the United States when they were kidnapped by cartel members and held for ransom. David watched as other America-bound hopefuls had limbs chopped off and were killed by cartel sociopaths if their family members didn't pay the ransom. Even described being forced to eat the bodies of murdered people to conceal evidence of their deaths. David's brother, Dennis Sanabria, thought his brother and niece were going to be murdered despite only raising half the demanded money. Their story of financial extortion is not rare, it's industrialized.
For thousands of migrants heading north to the United States, their journey through Mexico is one paved with danger.
Los estaban esperando un grupo de personas armadas.
A group of armed men were waiting for us.
La mochila
They took
que
my
traigo
bag and they put me face down on the ground.
Boca abajo. Le gusta este arbolito.
David Sanabria remembers how he and his 4-year-old daughter Jimena were met by armed men when they arrived in Mexico. They left Honduras last year. They paid a coyote that was supposed to take them to the U.S.-Mexico border. But when they got there, they say they were handed to a group of kidnappers.
Me dijeron a mí que eran
They told me that they were from the Golfo cartel.
Del Golfo.
They were taken to the desert, joining 50 other migrants. That's when they say the kidnappers called his brother Dennis, who lives in the United States, demanding $7,500 for his release. His story one that is becoming more and more common. Over the past year, Telemundo investigative team spoke with over 30 migrants, among them women and children, all of who claim survived a kidnapping. Videos like these leaving some family members with no choice but to pay thousands of dollars for their loved one's safety. All of them in makeshift camps across the border that have become a hunting ground for kidnappers. With so many disappearances, migrants are forced to keep an eye out at night.
We don't want the kids to go out a lot or by themselves.
Berta Hernandez bears the scars of what can happen when the ransom is not paid. She's saying as soon as you're taken, the first thing they do is take your phone.
They see who you're talking to, and the only messages they found were with my mom. It was a U.S. phone number, just one, and all they saw was money.
David says that when he and his daughter were taken, it was his brother Dennis who got the call.
I pleaded with them that I didn't have the money to pay them. I didn't know how.
When my brother would tell them that he didn't have the money, they would hit me and throw me on the ground.
David says he witnessed how others were dismembered when they didn't have the money.
Puro machete, lo desmembraban.
They would dismember them and kill them with machetes.
He says he was forced to eat the meat of those who were killed.
Para que no hubiera rastro de nada.
They forced us to eat their meat so there wouldn't be any remains left.
Dennis claims he sold everything he could to help his brother. He asked for borrowed money, but was only able to raise half of the amount they asked for.
At that moment, I heard my brother pleading, "Brother, brother, if you can't get the money now, just let them cut me into pieces."
Despite the recent increase in migrants, neither the Mexican nor...
In history class, we learned about slave ships filled with Africans coming to the Americas like cargo, with countless slaves dying before reaching landfall. While we may not be carrying people in ships across the Atlantic today, Mexican cartels are stuffing men, women, and children into cars in the backs of container trucks, with little care for how many survive the journey.
Tonight, stunning new evidence in what officials are calling the nation's deadliest case of human smuggling. This empty trailer, now tied to the deaths of 53 men, women, and potentially children left packed inside. Among the dead, 4 Hondurans, including 2 brothers, Alejandro and Fernando Caballero. Today, their mother mourning their loss, saying her sons were anxious but excited for a future where they could work to build their mom a new home. Mexican authorities cooperating with U.S. investigators are painting a grim picture of the deadly journey. After crossing the border in Laredo, Mexican officials say at 2:45 p.m. Monday, the truck passed through a Border Patrol checkpoint in Encino, Texas. A camera capturing the driver, identified by Mexican authorities as a now detained U.S. citizen, who then drove through Cotulla before stopping 146 miles later in San Antonio on a 100-degree day. That alleged driver, named by the U.S. Justice Department as Homero Zamorano, and charged tonight with 1 count of alien smuggling resulting in death. If convicted, Zamorano faces up to life in prison or a possible death sentence.
It's a lot of coordination, so it's suggestive of a higher level organization.
Special Agent Craig Larrabee runs Homeland Security investigations covering the southern Texas border.
These organizations, potentially cartels, they're really looking at these people as a product.
Just a product, a commodity. I mean, it's just simple. More people, more money, more profit.
On the border,
what we saw during the Biden administration was unprecedented. Entire communities were turned upside down as these same cartel organizations and foreign gangs had free rein to terrorize the imported underclass with impunity. At the peak of mass migration, places like Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, New York, were transformed into a third world open criminal market featuring an abundance of migrant prostitutes selling their bodies for economic survival, likely under duress though, probably forced into sex slavery by gangs like Tren de Aragua.
There's a bustling marketplace of food and toys on the corner of Roosevelt Avenue at Junction Boulevard. But the open-air sex market families see a short distance to the west, including students on their way home from school, has parents demanding action.
What they are seeing, it can't be denied. There is an issue that is actually older probably than you and I.
Pix 11 News reported on the persistence of prostitution on Roosevelt Avenue during the middle phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, when sex workers in masks stood on corners to solicit customers. But we've never seen the numbers we're seeing now. Mayor Adams doesn't think decriminalization is the way to go.
There are real issues around illegal sex work, not only from STDs to sex trafficking to young girls getting involved with it.
We asked the mayor about reports Venezuelan women migrating to the city may be part of the Roosevelt Avenue brothels.
Our intel is telling us there's a level of accuracy to that. And this is Mary, this is what happens when you create an atmosphere that people can't provide for themselves.
4 years before Eric Adams was elected mayor, the NYPD changed its policy for prosecuting sex workers after a woman named Yang Song jumped or fell from a balcony in Flushing during a massage parlor raid.
My sister really cannot jump.
Song's brother said his sister chose sex work as a means to save money to buy a restaurant. Yet many other women are forced into it through trafficking, an issue that Assemblymember Catalina Cruz has worked on.
These are all humans. These are all people that deserve dignity, that deserve protection.
Since 2017, police have mainly targeted traffickers and sex clients.
And we're going to need a real partnership to prosecute the Johns. We want to focus on the Johns.
Getting public officials in Queens to talk about the issue is difficult. When we requested to speak with Assemblymember Jessica Gonzalez Rojas, co-sponsor of the bill to decriminalize sex work, we received an email. Unfortunately, the Assemblymember doesn't have the capacity at this time. Her colleague, Catalina Cruz, believes immigration reform is part of the solution.
Until we have a more holistic approach, having the hard conversations, we're not going to see an improvement.
The mayor said the flood of migrants coming to the city with little support systems contribute to the situation on Roosevelt Avenue.
We are going to create generational problems based on what the failure of the national government, and that is one example of that.
The spokesman for Queensborough President Donovan...
So when I see celebrities like Billy Baldwin attempt to manipulate the conversation about protecting our border and ending human suffering by focusing solely on preserving cheap manual labor, I can't help but view them as modern-day pro-slavery activists. James D.B. DeBow, who's an editor of the influential Southern economic journal called DeBow's Review, wrote in an 1850 article with the quote, "Take away the labor of the slave, and the great staples of the South, cotton, rice, sugar, and tobacco, cease to be produced in quantities sufficient to supply the world. The ruin of the South is the ruin of the North." The modern-day Democratic Party and many of its base supporters echo DeBow's irreverence for moral consistency in the abolition of human suffering purely to maintain industrial comforts. But let's say you still disagree with me on mass deportations and strengthening the border. Then answer these questions for me. How much slavery is acceptable to ensure your oranges are affordable? What's the suitable number of children to be kidnapped before you change your mind about having cheap landscapers? What's the ratio of migrant dreamers to sex slaves that you'd prefer? How many relatives should discover loved ones were murdered because they were too poor to pay a cartel ransom before it becomes problematic to you? Getting cheap nannies and lawn care comes alongside a system that perpetuates an endless stream of human suffering. So, is it still worth it to you? That's the question. If you like this video and you want to support my work, please become a subscriber on my Substack at adambcoleman.substack.com and check out the products of XXXY, just like the shirt I'm wearing here, by going to xx-xyathletics.com/Adam. Thank you, and God bless.